Hello. Today, I want to talk about a topic that can be extremely frustrating for Tamagotchi collectors, and that is the screws on vintage Tamagotchi. When Tamagotchi originally launched back in 1996 and 1997, they released a plethora of versions, each with different themes, characters, and mechanics. One thing that all these original releases had in common was that they had a battery cover held in place by two tiny screws. And I mean tiny. These things are practically microscopic. Plus, to change the batteries, you needed to remove and replace these screws every time. Understandably, if you cannot get the screws out, the Tamagotchi is virtually useless, since you wouldn't be able to change the batteries. What's worse, the batteries stuck inside could leak and corrode or damage the contacts inside the Tamagotchi. Unfortunately, many of the screws used in vintage Tamagotchi had issues. Often, the screws would be too tight, or they would rust and get stuck. In the case of some specific releases, such as the Devil and Santa Tamagotchi, they used poor quality metal for the screws. It is very common to find these versions with stripped screws. In some cases, the screw head would break off with the rest of the screw still inside the toy, making it impossible to hold the back cover in place. I personally have had a few bad experiences when trying to remove screws from vintage Tamagotchi, and I want to share my experience in the hopes that it may help someone and prevent frustration. The most important thing when it comes to removing vintage Tamagotchi screws is to have the proper screwdriver. At first glance, these look like regular Phillips screws. Many people reach for eyeglass repair kits like this one, and this is what I used originally myself. However, these are not Phillips screws. These are JIS screws, which stands for Japanese Industrial Standard, and they were used in Japanese electronics as well as Japanese motorcycles. The difference between a Phillips and a JIS screw is that a Phillips screwdriver is specifically designed to cam out, or slip, when maximum torque has been applied. This means that if you use a Phillips screwdriver in a JIS screw, it can slip and cause damage to the screw and potentially strip it. The JIS screwdriver is designed to grip the screw, and you can turn as much or as little as you want without it giving. The downside to this is that you can damage the screw or the device if you over-tighten it, which in the case of a Tamagotchi means potentially cracking the plastic. You must be careful and gentle when using a JIS screwdriver, but it has a much lower risk of causing stripped screws. In fact, even when a screw looks nearly completely stripped, a JIS screwdriver may still be able to get it out. The screwdriver I prefer to use is this one. The brand name is Hozan, and it is a size 0 JIS screwdriver. You can find these online for decent prices, and they also come in sets with other sizes. This iFixit set also comes with a few JIS bits in different sizes, and I found that this works very well, and there are also multiple other useful bits in case you need to work on other electronics too. The Hozan driver looks almost comically large for the size of these screws, but it has a secure fit and it is easy to turn, which is why I tend to prefer it. Now, let me demonstrate on this Tamagotchi. I got this Devilgotch a few years ago, and it was brand new and still sealed. I was nervous at the thought of trying to remove the screws, since I had heard of numerous issues with them. However, the JIS screwdriver got them out with no issues, and I immediately replaced them with new screws that I got online. As you can see, the screwdriver fits snugly, and I barely have to apply any pressure to turn the screws. When putting them back in, use a light touch, and when you feel it start to resist, stop turning. I have here another Tamagotchi that has a stripped screw, and I had to take it to a watchmaker and have it drilled out to get the back cover off. The remaining screw is still very tight, but the JIS screwdriver has no problems with it. I highly recommend getting your hands on a proper JIS screwdriver if you collect or use vintage Tamagotchi. It can be an invaluable tool to help prevent issues with stripped screws. Thankfully, they fixed this issue with more modern releases as they switched to larger screws. Well, that wraps up this video, so I hope you found this information useful. Please subscribe to my channel for more virtual pet content, and you can also find me on Twitter as @TofuDigimon. Thanks for watching.